In this video, I'll teach you how to code. You learn how to build an app that everyone has on their phone. Code is simply instructions that execute line by line. Let's code with Python. No, not the snake, but a popular programming language. You can write Python code at colab.research.google.com. Log into your Google account if you haven't already. Then click on New Notebook to start a new notebook. When we code, we are getting the computer to help us. The computer stores and manipulates data. When I type x is equal to 2, it's an instruction to create a container, label it x, and put the value 2 inside. In other words, I assign x the value of 2. This container is often called a variable, which makes sense because I can change the values of variables. Let's say I type x is equal to x plus 1 underneath. This makes no sense in maths. How can x be equal to x plus 1? But it makes sense in coding. Remember, the code runs line by line, and equals means assigning a value. So the computer assigns x the current value of x plus 1. The new value of x is 3. Let's see this in action. I'll type print x, which is an instruction to display the value of x. Now let's run the code by pressing the play button. We see 3 as expected. Variables can also be text. These are called strings. Strings are enclosed in quotes. It doesn't matter whether you use single quotation marks or double quotation marks. This line assigns the string he is happy to the variable y. Strings and numbers are completely different things. In this line of code, x is a number. More precisely, an integer. If I add quotes around 2, for example like this, then x is a string. When I run the code, there's an error. Python tells you that the second line fails to execute because you're combining a string with a number. Strings can only be combined with strings. Let's say someone else supplies you the value of x, which is a string 2 in this case. So you can't remove these quotation marks. How can you convert x into an integer? Just add x is equal to int brackets x. This assigns x the integer value of x. Let's run the code again. Python now displays 3. Int is called a function, a set of instructions that perform a specific task. Functions can help us manipulate data. Functions have round brackets towards the end. By the way, you've seen a function before. Print is also a function. Another common function is input. If I type p is equal to input, enter input, it's an instruction to prompt the user for input. The string that appears between the round brackets is the prompt. Python saves your input as the string p. Let's add print p and then run the code to verify this. When I type some input and press enter, Python displays exactly what I input. Hello. Print, int, and input are all inbuilt functions. You can use them immediately when you load Python. However, you need to import some functions before you can use them. Let's say I need to measure time in Python. I'll search for how to wait for 1 second in Python. This search result tells me that the code needs to start with import time. Then time.sleepx tells Python to wait for x seconds before running the next line of code. For example, time.sleep10 makes Python wait for 10 seconds. Time.sleep is an imported function. Let's try to use it before importing it. Python displays an error. Python says it doesn't know what time is, but the error goes away when you import time. Now Python simply waits for 3 seconds as instructed. When using functions, you often need to add information between the round brackets. That information is called parameters. It's just like buying a birthday cake. You don't just say, "I want a birthday cake." You also tell the shop what message to put on the cake. Notice that my online search helped me a lot. It told me what function to use and what information to supply. It also told me that a function needs to be imported. If you want to do something but don't know how to do it, use your favorite search engine. It's every programmer's best friend. Sometimes, you want to execute a function repeatedly until something happens. For example, let's say you want to find out which numbers between 0 and 100 are multiples of 3. One way of doing this is to start with 3 and keep adding 3 until you reach 100. You can do this manually, but it's tedious. Instead, you can use a while loop. What do these 3 lines of code mean? They mean, "Hey Python, as long as x is below 100, print out the value of x and then add 3 to x." In other words, the indented lines run repeatedly. They only stop when x is at least 100. When I execute the code, it works as expected. 3, 6, 9, and so on. Be careful when using while loops. If I had typed x is equal to x minus 3 instead, then Python would have subtracted 3 from x each time the loop ran. X will never go above 100 as it keeps decreasing. So the code would run for a very long time. And I don't dare to run the code. Now, let's build our first app, a timer. A countdown timer has 3 components. First, you need to know what number to count down from. Second, it's good to tell users how many seconds are left. Finally, you need an alert to tell you when time is up. Let's allow the user to determine how long the timer should run. The first line asks the user how many seconds the timer should run for and saves it as the string duration. The next line converts duration into an integer. Now let's make the second component. Every second, I want to tell the user how much time is left. Let's say I'm counting down from 5. I want to print 5, wait 1 second. Print 4, wait 1 second. And so on until I reach 0. I'm repeatedly doing something while there is time left. Doesn't it sound like a while loop? Let's write it down. Now I need to wait for 1 second. Then I need to subtract 1 second before printing the remaining time. Don't forget to add import time, because time.sleep is an imported function. People normally import everything at the start of their code. It's neater that way. Finally, I need to tell the user when their time is up. Let's just print a simple message. Time's up. Make sure this line isn't indented, because it's not part of the while loop. If you indent it, Python will print time's up every second. Now let's test the timer. I'll type 5 and press enter. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. Wow, it works as expected. However, the timer is actually off by a couple of milliseconds, because printing duration and subtracting 1 take a teeny weeny bit of time. So don't use this timer for anything that requires millisecond precision. We've learned that coding is getting a computer to help us. The computer stores and manipulates data for us. Congratulations on learning enough programming to create your first app. To get better at programming, you need to do 2 things. First, practice what you've learned. I've left some practice problems in the description. Second, learn new techniques. So stay tuned for future videos. In no time, you'll be able to impress your friends, family, and future bosses.